Well, guys, the year 2022 has come to an end. So today I am going to rank all 53 things that I saw in the year 2022. This is going to cover TV shows and movies. I could have just done a top 10 worst and a top 10 best, but I didn't see everything. My theater wasn't available from January to April. So there's going to be a lot on this list missing that you're going to want on this list. But good news, you probably saw the movie, so you can drop your list down in the comment section below, and I'd love to hear what I missed out on and what I was glad I avoided. And with all that out of the way, let's start off my list. Coming in at the bottom at number 53 and number 52, both sitcoms, Blockbuster and Reboot. Both of these shows I found to be very awkward and not very funny. Of the two, Blockbuster was the hardest one to get through because the characters and the writing felt so rough. But both of these shows I could not get past the first episode on, and so for that reason I have them down at the bottom of the list. Coming in not far behind at number 51 is Falling for Christmas. Now, this was Lindsay Lohan's return to the screen of movies, and unfortunately, her return to the movies was not a movie for me. Now, I watched this with my wife and my mom. They both seemed to really enjoy it, but for me, the production, the hallmark writing and feeling, the beaten to death storyline just had me checking out just minutes into the film, and needless to say, I did not fall for Falling for Christmas. At number 50, Morbius. Now, what can I say about this thing that hasn't been said already? It's obvious that this was meddled with during the post-production. All of the Spider-Man connections and shots from the trailer were completely removed, leaving behind a dull and lifeless origin story to a character that I didn't find all that interesting. The action was cool, and the way that they presented some of Morbius' powers looked good on screen visually, but not even Matt Smith's dancing could keep this vampire flick from being sucked dry of anything enjoyable. At number 49, we've got Meet Cute. They tried to do a unique time travel movie with this, with Kaylee Cuoco's character going back in time again and again to relive her first date with Pete Davidson's character, because it was the only time in her life where she was really happy. But the film doesn't do enough to keep this movie from feeling repetitive. I did not find the chemistry between Kaylee Cuoco and Pete Davidson within the scenes of this movie, and in the end, this movie is more of a depressing time than a kooky little rom-com like I think they were going for. At number 48, we've got Book of Boba Fett. Now, Boba Fett was never a character that I really got the hype for. I know people thought he was really cool from the original trilogy, but I just never understood what beyond his look made Boba Fett such a good character until I saw Mandalorian Season 2, and then I started to change my tune a little bit, because in Mandalorian Season 2, Boba Fett was pretty awesome. So when they announced that Boba Fett was getting his own spin-off show at the end of Mandalorian Season 2, I was actually pretty hyped to check it out. Well, that didn't last too long, did it? The show was way too slow for my liking, in a way where it felt like the show had no plot. It felt directionless to the point that it decides to turn into a Mandalorian Season 2.5 halfway through its season, completely ditching the character of Boba Fett and what he was up to, which to me was a relief, because what Boba Fett was up to was boring me out of my skull. As far as I'm concerned, maybe they should have just left Boba Fett to rest in the belly of the Sarlacc pit after all. At number 47, we've got She-Hulk. Now, in the 14 years that the MCU has existed, I've never been able to say that one of their projects I disliked. I've liked some more than others, but all of their movies ranged from okay to great for me. And then the TV shows came, and that's when She-Hulk hit, and now I have to say that I dislike a project in the MCU. It's not that She-Hulk is all bad, and I actually really enjoyed the first 3 episodes. Tatiana Maslany was great as the lead, and I was intrigued with what they were doing with bringing back Abomination at the start, but then the writing really let this show down for me. It wanted to be an episodic while trying to carry through a storyline, but in the end, none of it mattered, and this show just felt like a complete waste of time to me. Plus, it really wasn't all that funny. So for that reason, it comes in at number 47. At number 46, and breaking my heart, is Jurassic World Dominion. Now, how do you make a Jurassic Park movie feel so lame? Jurassic World Dominion found a way. Even with bringing back the original cast, the script wasted them, replacing the promised exploration of what would it be like if humans and dinosaurs coexisted today that was teased at the end of Fallen Kingdom, and even shown in all the trailers for Jurassic World Dominion, with corporations wanting to rule the food supply through giant mutant locusts. The dinosaurs are hardly touched upon. Humans and dinosaurs, I guess they're getting along just fine in this world. This was without a doubt my biggest disappointment of 2022, and as far as I'm concerned, it put the whole franchise into extinction. At number 45 is Ambulance. Michael Bay's nonstop thrill ride of an ambulance on the run from the police nearly gave me a migraine when I saw this in theaters. With too many drone shots, a chase that really overstays its welcome, and some clunky dialogue. Aside from Jake Gyllenhaal's chaotic performance, there's not much that makes me want to go on this ride ever again. Coming in at 44, we've got Super Pets. Now, Super Pets felt like DC's answer to Secret Life of Pets for me, which is a movie I also didn't like. And it wasn't necessarily a bad movie, it just kind of felt really generic to me. There were some chuckle-worthy moments, but nothing that really made me laugh out loud, and nothing that was really that memorable to me. I know that a lot of DC fans really loved it, both young kids and adults, but for me, it just didn't resonate with me, and I'd rather been watching anything else. Except for the movies below it on this list. Rounding out the end of the disliked section and coming in at number 43 is the Bob's Burgers movie. Now, Bob's Burgers is a hit and miss show for me. My wife really enjoys it, and there's a lot of episodes that I've enjoyed with humor that really works and hits for me. And then there's other times where the humor just doesn't work for me and it just feels awkward and weird. I've never really been able to place my finger on what exactly it is about Bob's Burger that gets me like that, but I can't watch more than 2 episodes in a row before I'm done. Enter the Bob's Burgers movie, a movie that was an hour and a half that felt like a 45-minute long episode that was supposed to air on TV that was just stretched out to be a feature-length film, mostly through musical numbers that were annoying and not catchy. The plot was fine but not very interesting, not to mention predictable. If you're a fan of the show, you probably had a better time with this than I did, but as someone who finds the show to be hit and miss, I felt like this movie was incredibly undercooked and I did not enjoy it very much at all. Hey guys, so it's a couple days later and I'm here editing the video and I just realized I totally forgot about that Sylvester Stallone superhero movie, Samaritan, on Amazon Prime that I watched. It would go about here if this was a 54, I guess this is a 54 list now. It would come after Bob's Burgers. It wasn't the worst thing ever, but needless to say, it was forgettable. Alright guys, let's keep going, let's get back to the video. Or I should get back to the video. Coming down the chimney and landing at number 42 is the Santa Clauses. Now, Tim Allen's return as a jolly old St. Nicholas this holiday season with the Santa Clauses was a complete surprise to me. I didn't hear anything about this thing until it dropped on Disney Plus, and I was like, what? They did another Santa Claus? And when this is a follow-up to the Santa Claus sequels, I actually had some fun with it. There were some funny lines and jokes, and I thought Tim Allen slipped right back into the character of Santa seamlessly. Was it cringy at times? Yes. Did it always work for me? Absolutely not. But for a show that I was expecting to get nothing out of, I actually ended up having a decent time watching the Santa Clauses. Call it nostalgia, call it whatever you want, but I just did. Running into the 41 spot is Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Now, Sonic the Hedgehog returned in Sonic the Hedgehog 2 this year, which brought in some familiar faces for fans of the games with Tails and Knuckles. As someone who didn't grow up playing the games, this didn't necessarily help the movie for me. They replaced James Marsden as Sonic's sidekick, which ultimately also ended up bloating the runtime way longer than I think this movie needed to be. With Tails, a character that spouted nothing but exposition, and I never really felt him and Sonic grow an organic relationship with each other throughout the movie. Knuckles was also a new and fun villain introduced. Jim Carrey once again as Robotnik was great, but not as good as he was in the first film. It's bigger with the action and the scale of the adventure, but for me it didn't make it better. Not a bad movie by any means, just one that wasn't able to resonate with me the whole time I was watching it. At number 40, we've got Dead to Me Season 3. Now, after enjoying the first 2 seasons with my wife due to the murder mystery element mixed with the dark humor, I was really looking forward to seeing what they were going to do with Dead to Me Season 3. But in the end, it felt like the show had run out of steam. The drama wasn't as interesting or stressful as the first 2 seasons, and with this being the finale to the show, I felt like the ending was kind of unsatisfying. No spoilers, and I won't dwell on this for too long because I'm sure a lot of you don't even watch this show. But this is a season that, while it had its moments, the relationship and chemistry between Christina Applegate and Linda Cardellini is still charming as ever, and they remain the bright spot of the show, but ultimately the season flatlined before it even finished for me. At number 39, we've got Manifest Season 4. Cancelled after 3 seasons on network TV, Netflix picked the show up for a 4th and final season. And fans have been waiting years for this season to come out, and unfortunately, the guilty pleasure of this show became to be more guilty than it became a pleasure. The story this season felt desperate. The writers really felt like they had written themselves into a corner and were desperately trying to get out of it. This show was always outlandish, but the suspension of disbelief stopped here for me. It still had some intrigue and the bonkers moments that I liked in the show, but it also had some of the dumbest things I have seen on TV all year. This season was a bit of a letdown, and for that reason, it comes in at number 39. At number 38, we've got Turning Red. Now, dropped on Disney Plus after having its theatrical release canceled, Turning Red was a Pixar film in a long time that I had trouble getting into. The relationship of the mother and daughter was nice, and there was a nice coming-of-age story to it, but it also had a story that I didn't find all that interesting with teen girls trying to get tickets to a boy band. The teen girl characters were more annoying than endearing to me, and while it had some cute moments and some humorous moments that worked for me, Turning Red is not a movie that I'll be turning to for entertainment very often. Keeping it with Pixar, at number 37, we've got Lightyear. Now, the first act of this movie I thought was really good, and the sci-fi elements were really working for me. But the last two acts got really generic for me and weren't up to the heights that the movie set up with that first act. The magic of the Toy Story franchise was nowhere to be found, and while I ultimately enjoyed my time watching this in theaters, I have no desire to revisit this anytime soon. Coming in at number 36, we got iCarly Season 2. Now, I grew up watching iCarly, and I found the first season of this reboot to be a very huge letdown. I did end up enjoying Season 2, though. It felt more like the classic show for me, bringing back old characters and old storylines in a style that was familiar. Yes, it had some dumb episodes. Yes, it feels more childish at times than the original show on Nickelodeon did. But for the first time in this reboot, I actually felt like I was watching the characters I watched as kids, as a kid, being adults as an adult, and I hope that feeling continues into Season 3. Plus, I actually laughed a couple times in this season, which felt nice. Moving from Paramount Plus to going over to Disney Plus, we've got Moon Knight at 35, my favorite premiere episode of any Disney Plus show thus far. With a great performance by Oscar Isaac and a fascinating character introduction, I was ready to love Moon Knight, but unfortunately I felt the show just kind of went all over the place. Ethan Hawke was a good villain, and while I enjoyed a number of moments and even episodes, in the end the show felt too big, too ambitious, and too loaded than its 6-episode season could handle, that while I enjoyed it, it did leave a lot to be desired. Sticking to Disney Plus, going into number 34, we've got Pinocchio. Now, everybody hated this movie when this dropped on Disney Plus, but I didn't mind it. I found Pinocchio endearing. The recreations of the scenes from the original cartoon I thought were fun, and I liked the voice acting. I thought it all fit very well. The mixture of live action with CGI gave the film a fun style from Robert Zemeckis, and while it wasn't the best Disney remake ever, I did find it far from being the worst, and I was a little charmed by it. Switching gears at number 33, we've got Beast. Idris Elba punched a lion. That's it. That's all the movie needed. That's all it needed to provide. That's what it provided. That's why it's at number 33. In all seriousness, did I care about the characters? Not really, but the movie had some legit thrills, and the lion attack sequences I found to be a lot of fun, resulted in a movie that I had a good enough time with in the theater, but I'm probably not going to revisit that often, but it's a great movie if you come across it on streaming. Speaking of movies to come across on streaming, we've got Black Adam coming in here at number 32. Ultimately, Dwayne Johnson's failed attempt at launching a franchise. Black Adam didn't have much going for it in the writing of its characters and story, but the action in this movie is where it's at. Thankfully, there is a lot of it. I liked the Justice Society of America. The connections to the now extinct DCEU were fun, and while we may never see The Rock as Black Adam again, depending on who you ask, I am glad that I saw this movie because it was actually a pretty fun time in the theaters and was a movie that hit at the right moment because we were in a drought of blockbuster films when this came out. At number 31, we've got Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, a beautiful stop-motion animation with a lot of heart and some surprisingly dark themes. For me, the movie never stayed as good as the first heart-wrenching 20 minutes were. I found Pinocchio kind of annoying once he came into the movie and throughout the whole thing. The songs weren't very memorable or catchy to me, but Guillermo del Toro clearly poured his passion into this project, and while I personally didn't love it as much as everyone else seemed to love it, I still liked it, and it's one that has stuck with me since I saw it. Landing in at number 30, we've got Nope, Jordan Peele's sci-fi about a mysterious UFO that didn't fully work for me. The first hour I found kind of slow and filled with so many false jump scares that I started to lose the tension that the movie wanted me to feel. But just as I was about to check out, the second hour kicks in and becomes a pretty epic and suspenseful blockbuster. A mixed bag for sure, but one that ultimately I'll definitely watch again in the future. Obi-Wan Kenobi coming in at number 29. Now this was my most anticipated thing of all movies, of all TV shows for 2022. The return of Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen is one many Star Wars fans have been waiting for, including myself, and this show delivered a lot of moments and scenarios that I have been dreaming of seeing for many, many years. But while it did make some of my dreams come true, it also gave them in a show with some poor production quality and a story that honestly had a lot of unnecessary characters and elements. I'm very glad I saw it. I'm grateful for the moments it gave me between Obi-Wan and Vader, but man, I wish it was so much better and it just could have been so much more. At number 28, we've got Minions: The Rise of Gru. Now, I had no desire to see this movie. I haven't enjoyed a Despicable Me movie since the second film, and the Minions movie was not my cup of tea, but I found this to be a return to form for the franchise by once again adding a young Gru into the mix and balancing that screen time between him and the Minions. Some of the jokes really landed for me, a film that some people found really annoying, but I actually had a decent time with, and I walked out of the theater with a smile on my face. Speaking of humor that might have been annoying to some people, probably the most polarizing movie in the MCU to date is Thor: Love and Thunder, and it comes in at number 27. As a comedy, I embraced it and I laughed throughout the entire runtime. Do I wish that it dove more seriously into the aspects of the movie that were legitimately dramatic, like Jane's cancer and Gore's quest to kill the gods? Absolutely, but the film that we were given by Taika Waititi obviously was looked at as a screwball comedy. That's how I accepted it, that's how I watched it, and that's how I enjoyed it. You can call it a guilty pleasure if you want, but when it comes to guilty pleasures, we've got number 26, and that is Love is Blind Season 3. This has been a guilty pleasure of mine, and I love watching this with my wife. Love is Blind gets two people who have never met to marry each other within the span of 2 weeks. And boy, does it cause for some reality show drama. And this season had plenty of drama to deliver, with moments that had both me and my wife gasping and reaching for the remote to hit the next episode. It is complete trash, but it's our trash, and I love watching it every season, and I cannot wait for season 4. At number 25, we've got After Party, an overlooked Apple TV series. After Party is a murder mystery after a house party results in the host being killed, and it utilizes many forms of media to tell its story, including animation and a musical episode that actually had some pretty great tunes in it. 2 shots, anyone? The ending was a little disappointing and seemed predictable, but I really enjoyed the ride that this whodunit took me on, and I think it's been very underrated this year. If you haven't seen After Party, I'd recommend checking it out. Coming in at number 24, we've got Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal are what made this movie for me. Their chemistry provided a lot of laughs. The scene with them on acid had me dying in the theater alone. I loved that scene. The callbacks and Easter eggs to past Nicolas Cage movies were a lot of fun to spot, and while the story wasn't necessarily the strongest, I did find this to be an underrated gem of 2022. At number 23, we've got The Adam Project, a Netflix original time travel movie starring Ryan Reynolds and Walker Scobell as an older and past version of each other, and their dynamic in this movie was a lot of fun to watch. Walker Scobell perfectly captured that Ryan Reynolds style of humor to a T, and the story itself, while nothing entirely new, was pretty decent and resulted in a very sweet little movie that I had a good time watching at home. At number 22, we've got Severance, the most mind-bending thing I watched all year. Severance kept me on the edge of my seat the entire time. With a phenomenal cast, a fantastic mystery that kept you guessing throughout, and a jaw-dropping season 1 finale, all Severance had me saying was bring on season 2. Cobra Kai Season 5 slips in at number 21, and this show has been entertaining from the start, and it has not run out of steam 5 seasons in. Bringing back old villains from Karate Kid 3 and making it work in a way that doesn't feel forced is no easy task, especially since Karate Kid 3 is the worst of the original trilogy. But the writers and the creators of the show did it with ease. It brought us some character resolutions we've been waiting to see. The action and fight choreography is still top notch and the most violent the series has ever been. The show knows exactly what it is and delivers on exactly what you want to see from this world and from these characters. Cobra Kai never dies indeed. Up next at number 20, we've got Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. What looked like a throwaway movie dropped on Disney Plus ended up becoming what a lot of people are calling the Who Framed Roger Rabbit of this generation. And I can't really disagree. I never watched Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers growing up, but I still got a kick out of this movie. With cameos galore from many different properties, never knowing who was going to show up made when they did that much more surprising and satisfying. The movie also had a great story to go along with it, which in and of itself I thought was hilarious and brilliant. It's a movie that I can see gaining a lot of followers as time goes on, and I for one am up for a sequel. Next up at number 19, we've got Weird the Al Yankovic Story, the hardest movie to find in 2022 as it was only available on Roku. But as a Weird Al fan, I loved what this movie was doing with parodying and ripping on the stereotypical biopic movie formula. The second act had a weird kind of kidnapping storyline with Madonna that kind of lost me for a bit, but I had such a good time with the first and third acts that I really didn't mind. Daniel Radcliffe was amazing as Weird Al, playing it straight in this ridiculously goofy movie. The way that they incorporated a number of Weird Al's parody songs into the movie I thought was brilliant, and the movie was just really, really funny. I didn't love it as much as I wanted to love it, but for what we got, I was down with this Weird the Al Yankovic Story. The Lost City comes rolling in at number 18, a movie that I knew nothing about when I took my wife to go see it on date night, but once I saw it, I didn't forget it. Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum were hilarious together. Daniel Radcliffe making his second appearance on this list as the villain was great. Brad Pitt getting X-Forced once again was unexpected and some of the biggest laugh I had in the movies this year. One of the most underrated comedies of the year and a legitimate adventure film that you don't get a lot these days. Don't let The Lost City get lost on you. Let's open a portal and move on to number 17 with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. This was another MCU movie that disappointed a lot of fans, but I had a lot of fun with this movie in a going through a haunted house kind of way. Sam Raimi infusing the MCU with his horror style was so much fun. Wanda coming off of WandaVision and being the villain for this movie was awesome and gave Elizabeth Olsen a lot of time to shine and to just be terrifying. It's not a deep movie. It's not even a very good character journey for Doctor Strange himself, but I don't care, man. I thought this movie was cool. I had a lot of fun with it, and for that reason, it's coming in at number 17. Staying in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and moving on to number 16, we've got Miss Marvel, a small coming-of-age story of a Pakistani teen girl in the MCU that absolutely captured my heart. Take the superhero origin out of this show and it is still very charming. I loved the family dynamic, I loved the characters, I loved learning about a culture that I knew nothing about going in, and while the story and the flow of the show had some issues for me and admittedly pacing problems, I still left each episode with a smile on my face anticipating next week, and I cannot wait to see these characters return in the MCU in the future. Starting our top 15, we have The Black Phone, a supernatural kidnapping story. This movie kept me in suspense and on the edge of my seat the entire time. Ethan Hawke gave a chilling performance as the Grabber. All the child actors were great, especially Madeline McGraw, who I thought stole the show with her very authentic feeling performance. The movie had a surprising amount of heartfelt moments and an ending that had me cheering more than any movie I've watched this year. If you don't believe me, you can check out the movie commentary I did back in October and see for yourself. Who would have thought that Doctor Strange had competition with the multiverse this year? But he did, and he lost to Everything Everywhere All at Once, coming in at number 14. A truly original film that had some fascinating concepts, great performances, exciting action, and a ton of creativity. There were scenes and images and ideas on screen that I had never seen before, and it totally captured my imagination for its entire running time. Moving on to number 13, and these are movies that I loved. We've got Werewolf by Night, Marvel's first ever Halloween special on Disney+, and based on their reception, it probably won't be their last. A throwback to black and white monster films from the 40s and 50s, Werewolf by Night was one of the most refreshing projects we've seen from Marvel in a while. With a whole new set of characters, a new look at this pocket of the MCU, and some thrilling and violent kills to come from a studio like this, Werewolf by Night was a real treat this Halloween season, and I love seeing Marvel take risks like this with their projects. I hope it continues beyond into phase 5, 6, and 7. At number 12, we've got The Menu. Full of social commentaries and dark humor, The Menu was one of the most fascinating films all year. With a bone-chilling performance by Ray Fiennes as a chef that has seemingly lost his mind, a great ensemble cast led by Anya Taylor-Joy, The Menu left me hungry for more and for a cheeseburger. Lasting off into number 11, we've got the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. And another first for Marvel, as this was their first Christmas special. The Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special packed a lot of heart and humor into its 45-minute runtime. Drax and Mantis were a great comedic duo to follow. Kevin Bacon was a welcome presence in the MCU. This iteration of the Guardians may be ending in Volume 3, but this special will be played in my house every holiday season from here on out. Speaking of new holiday classics to be played in my house every year, we've got Violent Night coming in at number 10. Violent Night was just a bloody good time. With creative kills This movie utilized the idea of Santa taking down terrorists on Christmas Eve to its full potential. David Harbour was great as this iteration of Santa, and the film had a surprising amount of Christmas spirit that made this more than just a violent Santa killing fools. I had a huge smile on my face the entire time, even when I felt like I shouldn't have. Moving down the list to number 9, we've got Andor. And talk about a pleasant surprise. I had no interest in this show when it was announced. Cassian Andor was not a character I cared about in Rogue One. In a year when we had Obi-Wan and Boba Fett both getting their own shows, who would have guessed that Andor would be the best Star Wars project to release this year? The production value on this show was incredible. One of the reasons being that they used actual locations to shoot in. It showed us a more sinister side of the Empire than we have ever seen before, while also showing us the dirty side and the politics involved in the rebellion. A slower burn than most Star Wars content that let you really sit in the world and situations of the characters. Andor blew me away with how mature Star Wars can actually be, and this might just be a game changer going forward for the entire franchise. And speaking of Star Wars, at number 8 we've got Light and Magic. As someone who loves documentaries, especially about filmmaking and the filmmaking process, this retrospective on the special effects company Industrial Light and Magic was right up my alley. With archive footage that feels unbelievable for them to have on hand, the journey of this effects company from their humble beginnings working on Star Wars to Jurassic Park and Terminator 2 to the work that the company is still doing to this day, this gave a look into the world of movie effects like no other documentary I've seen before and celebrated those who have made many of our favorite movie moments come to life. If you haven't watched this documentary on Disney Plus yet, I highly recommend it for any film lover out there. It is truly magical. Take a swim with me on Pandora as we enter number 7, Avatar: The Way of Water. James Cameron comes back 13 years later to once again give us a visual and 3D masterpiece. But this time around, I also felt like Cameron put more work into the characters and story to make this more than just a spectacle piece of art. The action in this is phenomenal, and Cameron proves that he has still got it. My mind was blown and my emotions were open to this world, ending this year off with a bang with one of the best blockbusters of the entire year. Coming up at number 6, we've got Prey, one of the dark horses on my most anticipated of the year list back at the beginning of the year, but it did not disappoint. Prey takes the Predator franchise back to its roots to deliver a fun action period piece as man, or should I say woman, face off against the alien threat. The return to simplicity was a welcome one, the kills were brutally fun, and the Predator hasn't been this terrifying since the original film with Arnold back in 1987. I had a blast watching this thing at home, and hopefully any potential sequels gets put on the big screen next time. Rounding out our top 5, we've got Wakanda Forever, the 30th MCU film and one of the toughest challenges we've seen all year. As the world lost Chadwick Boseman, the creators decided to move forward without a T'Challa, which left everyone asking how are they going to do a Black Panther movie without the Black Panther? But by infusing the script with the emotions that they were going through in real time, Ryan Coogler delivered a beautiful movie about loss and grief and put the focus on Wakanda and its citizens as they grapple with the loss of their king. Still with a good villain in Namor and some big action set pieces, Wakanda Forever was able to be both an emotional journey while keeping that epic style we're used to seeing in big blockbusters to deliver a unique experience within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Coming in at number 4, we've got Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. Netflix paid over $400 million to the rights of this franchise, and you can definitely see that money on screen with a bigger and more ambitious film than its predecessor. But Rian Johnson doesn't let the bigger budget distract him from crafting a murder mystery that once again delivers laughs, but also has some thrill. The new ensemble cast is great, and Daniel Craig is even better as the bumbling but yet still brilliant Detective Blanc this time around. While the reveal of the murderer was a little bit predictable for me, just like the first film, Rian Johnson still crafted a great story, and there are still many twists and turns to keep the brain engaged to make this whodunit another one that keeps you on the edge of your seat. Speaking of the edge of your seat, coming in our top 3 is Top Gun 2. Who would have thought that Top Gun 2 was going to end up being the highest grossing film of 2022 thus far? Avatar might still catch it, we have to wait and see. But with electrifying and exhilarating sequences achieved by practical stunts and air fight never before captured for the big screen, Top Gun Maverick managed to do the impossible, just like the mission within the film itself. Yeah, it's a simple story, but nobody cared because it was just such incredible old school filmmaking. But with a great cast, the right amount of nostalgia and heart, Top Gun Maverick soared higher than I think anyone ever imagined and is one of the best theater experiences and movies I saw all year. Our runner-up, and at number 2, we've got Stranger Things Season 4. An outstanding achievement from the Netflix series. The Duffer Brothers approached their most ambitious chapter of the story yet, and it was great. With callbacks to classic horror films like Nightmare on Elm Street, while also keeping the same lighthearted characters and humor, this season was just firing on all cylinders. Each episode was over an hour and 10 minutes long, and it never felt like that. Even when you get to the finale, which was 2 hours and 30 minutes long, this season never dragged for me. The pacing was incredible, the handlement of all the sub-stories going on was masterfully juggled, and I don't know what Season 5 has in store, but man, do they have a challenge ahead of them to follow up this season. It was almost my favorite thing I watched all year, but coming in at number 1 is The Batman. Matt Reeves' interpretation of The Dark Knight was a more grounded and grittier version, even more than Christopher Nolan's trilogy was. Robert Pattinson was great, bringing a young and detective Batman to the big screen. I loved how he worked with Gordon. Gotham felt like a character within the movie itself, and I absolutely loved the darker David Fincher approach to this universe with The Riddler by Paul Dano, who felt like he was a character ripped out of Seven. Even with all the other characters that Matt Reeves introduced into this movie to hopefully spin off a wider, bigger The Batman cinematic universe, he never loses focus of his character, and they all connect back to the Batman to deliver not only my favorite Batman movie, but my favorite movie of 2022. And with that, guys, that is all 53 things that I watched in 2022 ranked from worst to best. I hope to double this list by next year. There's a lot that I missed that I'm sure you want to talk about. So please, please, please put your list down in the comment section below. You can do top 10 worst, top 10 best, or if you're ambitious, put every single thing you saw in 2022 ranked worst to best down in the comment section below. I'd love to see it, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for joining me for the year 2022. Here's the 2023, guys. Thank you guys for joining me for 2022. It's been the best year on this channel yet. I'm very excited to see what next year has in store, and stay tuned for my most anticipated list of 2023 dropping very soon on the channel. If you're new here, why don't you go and hit that subscribe button. We talk about movies on here a lot. Hit the like button. It helps the channel out a lot, and I hope to talk to you guys again real soon.